you come from a space of addiction, you are a powerful mofo.
Welcome to Self-Made and Sober. I'm your host, Andrew Lassise with selfmade-coaching.com. And in this podcast, it's my job to interview people who are not only crushing it in business, but have also struggled with addiction in the past and are in long-term recovery. Be sure to join our Facebook group where we help entrepreneurs grow and scale their business at facebook.com/groups/SMC Mastermind, like Self-Made Coaching Mastermind. I hope you enjoy the show, and be sure to subscribe and rate the show afterwards so you can get notified each Friday when we put out a new episode. With me today is the diet junkie, Tanya Silva. Tanya, how are you?
Great. Thank you so much.
Yeah, I love the title. You want to give a little background on that?
Yeah, sure. I'm actually in the midst of rebranding mental health through fitness. However, Diet Junkie was created actually part of the whole recovery process. And if you notice, junkie is spelled Junke, and there's no I in it. So it's taking the I out of the ping pong, yo-yoing, back and forth space of the dieting and the weight cycling and stuff like that. So that's how that name was created, and actually how it really was created, because I did want Diet Junkie with the I in there. But the domain was $250,000. And I'm like, these people are crazy. I'm not paying $250,000. So then I was like, what if I take the I out? Because technically that's the whole point of it. So then I took that out, and it was $9.97. So there, Diet Junkie was created.
That's funny. I had a similar situation with my first company, Rush Tech Support. When I was coming up with the name, I just listed out like 100 different names and then went to GoDaddy and checked all of them against it. Like, I think initially the name was going to be like Infinity Tech Support, and it was like $10,000. And I was like, let's try a different one.
No.
It's cool though how the universe kind of takes that though, and you know, the symbolism and meaning behind it, where I think having it without the I, actually, you know, with the background of it, where you're taking the I out of the situation, I think that's a really cool story. And you can just play it off like that was my intention all along, not to save all that money.
I like to share also like the truth behind it, because like it's important that people don't get so frustrated, especially those of us that are like perfectionists and we want things to be done 100%. Is to just keep showing up and just to try a couple different things. And so I think it's also good to share like the truth behind it too. So then people are like, oh, okay, I don't feel so bad about myself, you know?
Yeah. And I don't think I've ever shared this on the podcast, but the initial name of the show was actually Entrepreneurs in Recovery. And when I Googled the name, the person who ended up being a guest and introduced me to a ton of people, Jesse Harless, he is a recovery coach, and he owns the domain Entrepreneurs in Recovery. And I emailed him. I was like, hey, can I call my podcast Entrepreneurs in Recovery? He's like, no. And I was like, well, I kind of have this whole thing started, so what am I going to do? And he's like, I don't know, like, figure it out. And I was like, okay, fine. And I spent weeks trying to figure it out. So the first couple episodes, it was recorded as Entrepreneurs in Recovery, and then we had called it Successful Sober People, and it was kind of a tongue twister. And after I spent all this time and all this energy for weeks trying to come up with the perfect name, day after day, just kind of banging my head against the wall, and it wasn't even like Rush Tech Support where it was like I needed like a $10 domain. I just needed a name that wasn't taken. And eventually I just...
For $10,000.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, I wasn't going to go that far. We already had the coaching domain, but I just gave up and I went on Fiverr, and for $7, some dude in India was like, self-made and sober. I was like, run it. Let's do that.
That's awesome.
Yeah, so,
wow. I got to get on there.
Yeah. So moral of the story, don't try to be creative. Just spend $7 and some guy in India will take care of it for you. And I've gotten more compliments on this name than probably anything that I've put together in my life.
You know, it all works out for the best. And even for the rebranding of what I'm doing is mental health through fitness, I literally just one day drove to Miami, which is an hour away. And this guy's like, I just randomly met this person who's a producer and he does film and movie. He goes, you are mental health through fitness. And at first I got really offended. I'm like, what are you trying to say? And then I was like, wait a second, he has something here, because I feel like I've outgrown diet junkie. And then it just, the evolution of the mental health through fitness just came because somebody said something and it was like, ding, okay, cool. So it does all work out for the better.
It's wonderful how there will just be opportunities in your life that it just seems innocuous at the time, where it's just like, oh, someone said this one thing, and then the snowball effect of it. I know for myself, one of the big turning points in my company, early days, a friend had called me. I remember I saw the phone ringing and I was like, ugh, this guy always wants something. And I was considering screening it, but I wasn't busy at the time. I answered the phone. He's like, hey, I got a job hanging some pictures at this lady's house. Can you give me a ride? I'll give you $30. I was like, okay, sure. And that woman like completely transformed my business and like changed it from a side hustle to like a real thing. And it's just,
Nice.
it's wild how these little random occurrences can just have gigantic impacts on everything, the whole trajectory of our life. Like, I look at that single moment as the moment that changed it from just Andrew in his living room fixing computers to what eventually became a company with dozens of employees and tens of thousands of customers. And just, it's been a crazy journey.
That's so cool.
So shifting gears, you got sober in 2006. What's going on in your life a little before that to make you decide this is something that I want to do? Or was life just perfect and you were like, maybe I'll just try getting sober?
No, I think that's a great question. I think what a lot of people don't realize is addiction is just a heavy attachment to something to get us through an intense triggered emotion. And so whatever that substance of choice is really just whatever you find on a cellular level you attach to. And so a lot of those attachments stem from childhood. A lot of the things when you're kids, you just don't have access to alcohol or drugs or a large amounts of going to the store and binging on food or whatever you're doing. For me and most people, I think in a space of coming from a space of addiction or heavy attachment, is this mental disorder stem from childhood because we're not taught how to handle our intense emotions. So when it really manifested into the physical was after I did my first bikini competition. And I had just used food and alcohol as a way to numb myself because I had severely gotten into a space of depression. And so I was healthy. I had competed. I had really leaned out. And then all of a sudden after the show, I'm like, okay, now what? Like, shit, like now what am I doing? And then it just, this wave of depression and anxiety and these intense emotions just escalated. Most people have them, but they're not to a space of like a complete, like, bam, in your face impact, like escalation, unless a life event occurs. And so after my first bikini competition, it hit, and it does hit for most people. And these are the side effects that people don't tell you in the bodybuilding industry. And I think now it's more so of an awareness. And so I just like use food and alcohol and numbed myself. And it just kind of escalated. But, it was just because I was never really taught how to handle anger, defeat, sadness, anxiety, depression in a healthy way. And so I turned to substances because they gave me that instant gratification, which, they give everybody instant gratification in that time. And so it just got completely out of control for probably a good year.
And when you first started, were there any consequences early on, or was it just sort of, hey, I found something that seems to be working?
Yeah. So, I mean, there's a little bit more to that story. Of course, there could be so many different side roads. So during that time also, I was in college and I played ice hockey for 9 years. So I was an athlete as well. But when I had transitioned from being this athlete that was a part of my identity for so long, I had then had competing and training and then using, the dieting stuff in the bikini industry as that substitution. And then I was like, oh, shoot, now I don't have hockey and now I don't have this. So then where do I go from there? But also during that time, what I'm getting to is I come from a space of family substance abusers. And during that time, my dad had to have major back surgery. And with this back surgery, he got hooked on painkillers, Oxycontin, probably cocaine. I mean, I really don't know because I was away during that time. So we grew up from a family of wealth, and all of that wealth was then taken from us. So, competing, then that hitting, then the family crumbling, all the money being gone. There were so many factors happening all at once that I couldn't understand. And the whole reality was just like taken. So I didn't really have anything. And the consequence was like, for the physical space, I had gained, 65 pounds. After people start binge eating, what the side effect is, because you fill your body just with so much food that you literally can't take on anymore. I then started skin picking to get that form of like instant relief, that, euphoria. And a lot of people that are binge eaters, like compulsive binge eaters, they actually then have a lot of not acne, but skin picking. So it's almost like whether it being cutting, which is another form of addiction, cutting, or skin picking, it's still a form of like cutting and self-abuse. So a lot of myself is more from a space of that.
So when you're going through all that in your life, what's going on in your head? Are you just like, I know for myself, I was just feeling completely defeated at the end of my addiction and alcoholism, and just kind of what's the point? What's going on in your head?
Yeah. So during that time, like I said, I was probably 17, 18 years old when everything's really started manifesting into the physical. So still a baby, and I didn't know what was wrong with me. I was like, I don't know what's wrong with me. Something's wrong with me. And I tried to tell my mom, and she's like, nobody talked about addiction, even though it was so heavily like my grandfather lost everything from addiction. They were super wealthy from alcohol. It was literally a family heritage I had no idea about. And I didn't even know till probably like, I don't know, 10 years after of, my own addiction. And it's embarrassing. It's embarrassing. You don't want to tell anybody. I mean, I'm in a sorority. I'm around other like females. I'm around people. You don't want to be seen. You don't want to be heard. You just want to like get into the space of like a hermit and pretend like everything's like okay. But I was aware that there was something wrong. I didn't know because I had never even heard of the word addiction before. And so I remember because I went back to school, and I was in school, and I went to like a counselor. I was like, I think there's something wrong with me. And I think the biggest thing is a lot of people go in and what, I try to coach people on is like, there's nothing wrong with you. You don't need to be fixed. You're not broken. You just have a toolbox that isn't in alignment to how, you want to function, operate, and show up in life. And so if you substitute that toolbox with other things that serve you, you'll be able to function and thrive in life and not be, an addict. And so she gave me this book on mindfulness and meditation. And that the way that I started to recover was very unconventional. Like I didn't go, like that was the only place really I went to. She just and then I started getting into books. I started getting into yoga. I always was exercising. I always felt exercise was such a powerful tool, even though my relationship around food and alcohol was very unhealthy and very abusive. Exercise was just always a tool to still give you that, feel good feeling and reconnect with yourself. And that's why the whole company model completely made sense when the guy said mental health through fitness. And I'm like, amazing, like it really is very powerful.
So what are some of the books that you recommend to your clients as far as getting the proper toolbox in place?
Well, it's hard to say. It's like, what's the best ab exercise? Like it depends. It's like, do you have rotator cuff issues? Do you have like hip replacements? Can you even get to the ground with your knees? I mean, there's not to say one all be all, because I feel like, especially with my journey and just also being around other people, is that it comes in layers. It doesn't happen overnight. And it's about disattachment. That's addiction is just about a heavy attachment to something. And if we can just realize that, then, and we have to, in order to be successful with overcoming it, you have to replace it with something of equal or greater value, or else you're always going to stay in this gray space your entire life. So you either have a red space, a gray, say it's like a light system. So I say you have a red light, which is like already an addiction and it's too late. You have a yellow space, which is how most people are operating and functioning these days, like people who don't think they need help. And then you have a green space of people that are thriving, they're doing well, they know they're in control of their emotions. They know how to set them, like not put themselves in spaces that like will trigger them, or they know they're just in control of their emotions. They're mentally healthy, they're physically healthy, and they're emotionally stable. And so, you know, it's hard to answer that because I feel like people need different things during different times. But I will suggest that self-care has to be a non-negotiable. And what I mean by self-care is, I mean, you need to start exercising. Exercise's main placement is to quiet the chaos of the mind. It's not even about the body. It's about taking care of your body so you can reclaim your emotional state and just quiet that chaos of whatever triggered emotion it may be. Second, you got to clean up your eating. And what I mean by this is food can really create mental disturbances as well, and emotional instability like depression, anxiety, create night terrors, affect your sleep. We think about food as like just looking great and having 6-pack abs. Like, no, man, like this is about your mental health, your emotional stability. And it reverses so many mental, dis-eases, like uneasiness. And then the third is really taking your sleep serious and making it a non-negotiable, because your sleep affects everything. It affects if you have energy to do your workouts, and it affects your hormones, and it affects your eating choices. So, I mean, if you can really get those 3 things down as far as like self-care, you can really get into a space where like you just not only function as quote unquote normal, because I know that's one of the goals for most people coming out of recovery, or like coming out of addiction and getting more into recovery. But I don't even like using the word recovery. I'm like, I'm just freaking thriving in life. I'm extraordinary. Because what you say is so, so powerful. So I guess, to answer your question about a book, eventually within my coaching programs, I do always suggest one main book, and it is The Hidden Messages in Water. Don't ask me how to pronounce this guy's name because I do not want to butcher it. But The Hidden Messages in Water really is able to take like that fluffy stuff of affirmations and really show how it affects us on a cellular level.
And was that, I just pulled up on Google real quick. I think I have the right person. Masaru Emoto.
Yep, I didn't say it, you did. So if it's not pronounced correctly, that's I don't take credit for it.
Yeah, well, I mean, I know for myself, and I know for a lot of the listeners, we're always looking for like that golden nugget, that silver bullet. Yeah. And I think in general in life, it's a lot more about the process and continuing on a journey, more so than, well, I read this book and now I'm a successful entrepreneur. Like, I don't think there's ever going to be a single book or a single resource. Like you said, a single exercise. Yeah. I think that's a great analogy, because I know a lot of times people think they're just one course away. They're one great idea away. They're just one moment. And I mean, we were discussing earlier, there are just completely random events that shift our entire lives. But I'm trying to think in my life if there was something where I was like, once I do this, then everything will be okay. I know I've had that negotiation in my head before, but I don't know if there's ever been a time where that is played out the way that I thought it would. I know when I was younger, it was once I graduate college, then everything will be fine. And then it was once I get a job, everything will be fine. And then it was once the recession's over, then everything will be fine. It was a constant looking forward for the future, because once the future comes, then everything will be okay. And in the meantime, I wasn't putting forth any effort, any actions into changing my current situation. I was just being the victim. And I know that
Yeah.
once I got into the self-development space and once I started making an effort on taking care of the things that I can control and focusing on things like health, wellness, mindfulness, all these things that we're talking about, once I started making incremental steps in that direction, I feel like once I've been doing this for a couple months, a couple years, I can see a huge difference between where I was when I started and where I currently am at. But I don't think that
Mhm.
there's just I read this book, now my life's different. I think that it can be a catalyst. I think it can introduce you to some ideas. But I mean, I've read about 5 million books on like business, million books on wealth generation, and I've learned a ton. But I can't say that there was any one nugget of knowledge that I read in one sentence that completely changed my life. So I like that
Yeah.
you put that disclaimer on the book,
Yeah.
but
And I think what you were saying too is like the greatest thing about like when you're always about when this happens, you're in a space of futuristic thinking. And when you're in a space of futuristic thinking, the emotion that's primarily triggered is anxiety. So you're constantly in a space of struggling with this battle of anxiety. And anxiety is a trigger emotion, which we want to numb or pacify. And that's why we stay stuck in this cycle, because there's got to be a behavior to self-soothe the anxiety, because people can't be functioning like that. So they go to pills, or they go to alcohol, or they go to food. You know, food is the number one mostly abused substance, and you need it to survive. So it's not like you can just, get off of it. And another thing is, when you get into the space of knowing like the right thing for you at the right time, it comes down to trusting yourself. But we have multiple layers and versions of ourselves. So how can we constantly operate from that space of our best self? And that comes from learning how to take care of ourselves. So yeah, but the hidden messages in water just brings insight on, we are 70% water, and our words of, if you are constantly repeating, I am a binge eater, I am an alcoholic, you're never gonna get out of that yellow space. You're never gonna be out of that vulnerable space. You're never gonna thrive out of your life, because you say, I am freaking like thriving. Or if you don't believe that, which there was a space where I didn't believe that and I got angry about it, I'm in the process of becoming healthy. I'm in the process of building a, 7-8 figure business. I'm in the process of, so at least that kind of like, that's another layer of things. But yeah, it's trusting yourself to know what you need at the right time. But if you don't trust yourself, that's where you hire out coaches that you trust to get you from where you are to where you want to be. And that's where we come in.
so do you think the idea of affirmations, instead of the kind of stop lying to yourself, I know there's different points of view, and I'm curious of your view on the affirmations, where it's like, I am 100 billionaire, I am someone that has 6-pack abs even though they're 500 pounds and can't walk. What are your thoughts on the
The
almost
fluff.
exaggeration, ridiculousness? Because and I'll be
Yeah.
honest, I'm sure a lot of people know the story. Jim Carrey wrote himself a
Sure.
check in the future. I think it was like for $10 million, and then on that date or around that date, he got the role for Dumb and Dumber, and that check was able to get cashed.
Yeah.
And I had done a much, much smaller amount, but a number that I never thought I'd be able to hit, and actually was able to achieve that. And
Amazing.
then the next one that I did, like 1 year later, was 50 times that number, and that didn't even come close. And the date came, and it was just like, well, I guess these ridiculous things don't work. So what's your view on affirmations, and how do you set them? How do you get them in the right path?
So I think going back to that book will help give insight on like what happens on a cellular level. Most people go around all day really negative about themselves. And the first thing that I teach when I work with somebody is it's called creating your North Star, creating your power words. And we narrow it down to 5. 5 represents change. So like in numerology stuff. And there's truth behind it because you can't be at 2 places at the same time. You have to choose one. Most people are so focused on where they don't want to be that they're constantly recreating patterns and putting themselves in the same situations because they're taking all their passion, all their energy, all their commitment, all their drive, and they're just focusing on spaces of what they don't want and where they don't want to be. So the whole concept of affirmations and placing your energy on a space of where you want to go, whether you believe it or not, you're at least shifting, looking to the left of all of this stuff of what you don't want and where you're at and how you hate life and how you're depressed and this and that. Like, okay, we get it. Like, that's so much energy, passion, drive, commitment that if we take those same qualities that you have, because people have them, they're just focusing in a direction that's out of alignment to where they want to be, and they place it over to the right where, okay, let me take all that stuff, which if like you come from a space of addiction, you are a powerful mofo because you have laser focus, you have this drive, you have this commitment, you just have all these qualities. So if you can take all of those attributes and generate it to a space and just create laser focus on that space of whether building a business or like getting yourself really healthy, and you just generate all that stuff into the other space, like then you can start moving. And that's why those powerful things happen. But if you're constantly repeating something or you're identifying yourself as something you used to be, there's no, if you think about the word emotion and you separate it from E and then the M, it's E, motion. Energy drives motion. And that's how it really is. So whatever passion or whatever you have to drive in a direction of ultimately where you want to go and start focusing in on that. And so that's one of the first things I get clear on when I work with students is we really develop these North Stars, and then we look up the words. What am I saying? Is this really where I want to go? And even if you don't know and you don't have that certainty, because most people struggle with certainty and self-trust, even if you don't have that, that's okay. Because at least if you just show up regardless of your emotional state, you're never going to truly know, because knowledge comes from experience. The only way to truly know something is by doing it. So by the time you get to that space, then you can make the decision, you know what, I thought this was going to make me happy, but it actually didn't. But you know what, at least I built up the confidence and self-belief that I can actually achieve it. And then I can course correct.
I think it's a great idea, too, that you get the confidence from the experience of doing something.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's like Gary Vee. He says something like, you're not going to get ripped by reading about push-ups. You have to be doing the exercise. It's not about reading up on how to properly execute this thing and do a ton of research. It's about getting in there, making mistakes, and course correcting, exactly like you're saying. And if the person who's showing you the way hasn't been there themselves, it's very difficult.
Don't hire them. Like, do not hire people who have not overcome what you are trying to overcome.
And that's like the basis of 12-step recovery is, hey, I was an addict and now I'm not an addict. Let me show you how I did this. And they make an analogy. It's like you're down in a hole and all the doctors, your family, friends, they're at the top telling you, you need to go this way. You need to do this. You need to do that. And another addict alcoholic is the only person who's qualified to jump in and say, I've been in this hole before. Here's how I got out. And the idea that we're showing someone the way when we've been in their same shoes, it gets a lot of confidence from that person. Because I've had, before my wedding a couple years ago, I had spoken to a friend who I knew, and he was a personal trainer. And he was like, yeah, come to the gym. I'll get you squared away. And I was like, okay, cool. And I show up and he's like, look, I'll be honest with you. I'm booked completely. I'm not going to be able to do this. However, talk to this guy. And the guy, he knew his stuff. I'll give him that. But he wasn't in the best shape. And I'll give credit where credit's due. The accountability and the motivation to show up, it did get me the results that I was looking for. But at the same time, it was like, well, I mean, you have the knowledge, but you're not
Doing
applying
it.
it
Yeah.
yourself. You don't have the things that I want in yourself. And that's why I think business coaching for myself, when I'm working with entrepreneurs who are just starting out,
Hmm.
and they're in the level of approaching six figures, and they're in the spot of, this is more money than I've ever made previously, but this is way beyond anything that I've ever accomplished before. I don't know how to break through six figures or even start thinking about seven or even eight. And I've been in that exact spot.
Yeah.
So when I'm speaking to them, it's not from a place of, I read this in a book, go try it and tell me what happens. It's, when I was in your shoes, I was in this hole, here is how I got out. And it's almost easy to be coaching on things that you've accomplished yourself, because it's like, yeah, I'm just rewatching the movie that I've already watched. I'm telling you what happens because this was my journey. And when the industries are similar, it's not super, super difficult to recreate results when it's based on a system, because we may have different services, but there's a lot of things that are parallels in a service industry that you can build and you can scale. And once you get past that mindset of, I don't know how to do this, I can't do this, but you hire a coach and they say, I used to think the same way that you're thinking. Here's what I did to get what I have.
Yeah. And here's what I see that you're not seeing. And the good thing too is, like, everybody has a road, but within each road, there are, and I talk about this in my nutrient like roadmap course, that there's side roads. Maybe it's emotional hunger. Maybe it's a cultural background, spiritual belief system, epigenetic. You got a road, but you got all these crossroads. And as a coach and being from that space, I can fast track somebody, you can fast track somebody and save them. If I spent probably $85,000 the last 6 years, trial and error, trying to build my business, and certifications, different degrees to enhance my practice and skill set as a coach. And then you get to a space and you're like, shit, I have to unlearn stuff. I have to unlearn some stuff, but I learned my experience from there. And you can save people so much. People think like, oh, $2,000 is a lot. Like, I spent like $85,000. $2,000 is not a lot. And it took me over 6 years. So if I can get you where you want to be, and let's say like 6 to 8 months, depending how much reframing we have to do and how much attachment you have, maybe to a year for it to be a lifestyle. And every year you're becoming better and you have the tools. And it's maybe like a couple $1,000s. Like, please don't complain to me.
Here's another way to look at it too. If you want to make $1,000,000, I've got it. You get a job paying $25,000 a year. You don't spend a single penny. And in 40 years, you will have made $1,000,000. There you go. You spent 40 years and you earn that 1,000,000. But what if I told you, if you spent $2,000, I'll get you there in 2 years? Would that $2,000 be worth 38 years of savings to fast track that? And I think we also, just as humans, we definitely discount the fact that time is something that is not something we can regenerate. It's not something that we have an endless supply of. So money is something that is a renewable resource and it can fluctuate. But time, and I mean, if we're not going to get into like the theory of relativity and like traveling at the speed of light and all that stuff, but like time on Earth that every person experiences, it has a start and an end, and there's no pausing. So if you want to get the results that you want to achieve in as little time as possible, hiring a coach, it's not only just an investment, but you're saving yourself agony and all of the problems that come
Yeah.
down the road, and you give yourself opportunity. And it's a lot of things. I hate diving down this hole, but it's a lot of the school system. It teaches you go work for somebody else, get a job, get a degree, and then you get into the real world, and it's like nothing you taught me actually applies to real life. And now I've got real life things like a mortgage and credit cards and taxes that everybody experiences, but no one's been taught anything. And it's like, well, aren't we going to talk about like dates of the Civil War? Like that's what I was taught in school. And it's like, nope, that doesn't matter in real life. And
Yeah.
it's like, but then why do we spend so much time on it? It's like, because it's the school system. But the idea, though, that you can spend a little extra money and eliminate headache,
Yeah.
eliminate hardship, fast track to where you want to be. And then from that level, if you have a business that's generating millions and millions of dollars, to get an extra $2,000 is really easy. But it's difficult when you're at the beginning stage and you don't have the end result to be able to see down the road, this is what life can look like. This is what life will look like.
Yeah.
Invest in yourself.
It's about the quality of life. And as scary as it is, the more you lean into your fear, the more you build up self-belief and self-confidence. And that's the main reason why most people don't step into things and they do develop heavy addictions and attachments, is because of the disappointment, not with other people, but with their self. And the more that you actually show up, and like reverting back to the beginning of the conversation, is regardless of your emotional state, you have to realize your emotions are not reliable. And regardless of your emotional state, you have to stay true to your highest self, your best self that you love, that you admire, that you respect, because it's in there. But if you show up for that and you invest in yourself, and the biggest thing, which I've seen, because I've worked with multi-billionaires, CEOs, I'm working with professional athletes right now, a few celebrities, but can't name drop any because I do promise confidentiality. But even these like billionaires that look like they have it all together, they're some of the most saddest people. And it's because they built all this stuff and they made all this money, but they haven't enjoyed the process and the quality of the life. And they've worked so hard. And getting back to the whole self-care segment, is as you're building your business, you can't lose yourself along the way. You have to, your business is your business. Literally, there is no business without you. So if you're showing up at 60%, 70%, 80%, even 90%, you're only doing yourself and other people a disservice. So by putting your oxygen mask on first and carving out time, like, you have to keep yourself as top priority. And what that means is take care of your body. When you take care of your body, you take care of your mind and reclaim control over your emotional state. That simple. Foundation.
So what are some of the strategies that you implement for people that, say, have terrible eating habits and are constantly stressed? I know now I'm going to be trying to get as much as I can for myself.
So the first thing that I always recommend to people is I have a 21-day habit reframing reset course. And it's literally just getting on schedule, getting on a sleep schedule, getting on an exercise schedule, and getting on a food schedule. When you have this like platform, this blueprint, then you can plug in the what's, but the platform has to be set in stone. It has to be a non-negotiable. And you have to think of your self-care as like a slingshot. I'm in this group called 90X, which it's going to be huge in the next year, but 90X Planner, they're planners. And I'm the self-care coach on there. And if you think about it, it's a slingshot, and you pull back in order to scale forward in every other segment of your life. And so it has to be a non-negotiable. And I think the biggest thing is just getting in your mind, like, I am top priority. And when I'm top priority and I take care of myself, everything else benefits. Everything else, for your wife, your kids, your business, your company, every conversation, because you're not showing up tired or burnt out, because that's actually a whole different subject we can go on. You're showing up fully alive and generating energy. There's power behind your interactions, your workflow, your whatever you're doing. There's energy, there's aliveness, there's momentum behind everything. And that comes from you recharging you. Nobody else can do that for you. So the first thing is just getting on schedule and making it a non-negotiable until you start to prove to yourself, like we talked about earlier, just show up and you'll see that this is truth, that that when you show up for you, like you have more energy. You feel like, oh, I don't have energy. It's because you're not moving. There's no circulation. There's no oxygen flow. Your brain is like, please give me oxygen. Your joints hurt because there's lack of synovial fluid. It's like, please give me movement because that's where I'll heal. Your body's so powerful. It has to be a non-negotiable.
So I've personally been on a pretty good regimen in the last couple months. My wife and I, we've been doing 5Ks and other races and stuff, getting back into shape, eating healthier and things like that. But today, for instance, I woke up, I got ready to run, did my morning routine, and it was kind of drizzling, and I talked myself out of it. What do we do on days like that, where today I talked myself out of it? Like, that's the truth behind it. I've got my workout clothes on. I was ready to go, and then it was a little wet outside, and it was like, well, I guess I can't take care of myself today because it's raining. What advice would you give to if I were speaking to you this morning at 5:30?
I would say we need to get you on a program. So the biggest thing too, just like food, is if you only have one option, you have no option really. And you have to have, like when I work with my students, we come up with at least 4 different things to cycle through. Strength training, I believe, to be the foundation, because you get to work on the little muscles, you get to work on the big muscles, you get to have mobility, functionality, like all that stuff. I focus more on functional strength training. Clearly I work with athletes, but I train people like athletes because the overall point is for, you to just thrive. So you have to have options of stuff, a home workout, home strength training workout, or if you have a gym membership, you go to the gym, but you don't have to go to the gym to do workouts. I have a whole YouTube channel, which I do 10-minute no time workouts for my, CEOs that travel, and they're like, oh, I'm in the hotel room, I can't do anything. I was like, yes, you can. Here you go. Here's your video. Like you can do stuff, but then of course, depending on your injuries, things to work around, but there's so many things. And getting back to that is where you say, okay, I can't do this, but what can I do? And this is where you have to have that second part of the equation. Okay, I can't do this, but what can I do? And then you create a toolbox. I say the word toolbox a lot because you got to have more than one tool in your box for exercise, for food, modalities to help enhance quality sleep.
I think that is the golden nugget of golden nuggets. Like, as you were saying that, it's just running through my brain, and that's just, I think, the selfishness of just like humans, where you say, well, if you have one option, you have no options. And then I'm bouncing that against every aspect of my life, and it's like, oh my God, that is so profound. I don't think I've probably heard it 700,000 times, but just maybe with it raining this morning, and you're absolutely right. There were a million options. My wife has a gym membership. We have a Bowflex in the garage. We've got YouTube on the TV for HIIT workouts and for your no time workouts, which I wasn't aware of. And I'm going to be visiting immediately after this because now I'm pumped and motivated and want to.
Now you're like 10 minutes. I can do 10 minutes.
And that doesn't only just apply for these micro situations of, oh, I don't feel like exercising today, but I think of if it goes into my business and marketing. And when people say we don't spend money on marketing, we have 100% referrals. That's how our business goes. If you have one option, you have no options. If that dries up for an instant, you're done. And I've experienced that.
Yeah, you got one side road, but what if there's a detour? I mean, you got one road, you got no side roads. Like, how are you going to get to where you want to be? You got to have options, and not just 2 options. You got to have multiple options because, for example, with the more the lines of the work that I do, holidays happen, vacations happen, life crisis happens. How do I keep my people mentally, physically, and emotionally and nutritionally healthy and thriving. We got it here. Oh, this is what's going on. Bam, here you go, solution. I got this. Bam, here you go. And then everything cycles.
So is the key putting systems in place before the stimulus comes? So for instance, if I had my workout regiment for I wake up in the morning, go outside and run, but if I had planned before, if it is raining, then I do this. Is that the strategy? You have the plan beforehand, or what does that look like?
Yeah. So getting back to the 21-day habit reframing, like reset, kickstart course, whatever people want to use, words, whatever word resonates with you. When we work on the exercise segment, we start to identify the body's movement patterns. So everybody has innate movement patterns. And I go back to childhood. Like, did you play any sports when you grew up? Did you, have you done anything that you actually really enjoyed doing? Like a lot of people, you said, I have the HIIT, I have the Bowflex, I have the gym. Do you know how to use the machines in the gym? Do you enjoy using the machines that you know how to use in the gym? Does your body enjoy them? The Bowflex, do you know how to work it correctly without getting hurt? And then HIIT workouts. Do you even like doing HIIT workouts? You will never catch me doing a HIIT workout because, number one, I've got so many things going on. The last thing I want to do is jumping in an impact. I played 9 years of ice hockey. I like gliding and flowing things. I like cable work and dumbbells. Every movement, coming back to mental health through fitness, is connection to breath. When you're completely connected to your breath and you're going through a space of an anxiety attack, or you're getting to a space of past depression and triggered things happen, a phone call happens, let me use the most extreme case scenario. When a woman gives birth, but besides, the epidural stuff, what do you do to prep for it? Breath work. So breathing, connection to breath. So when you're doing exercises and you're like, I use my breath, like I connected to the whole point of exercise is to connect to that breath. So when you get back to the point of, and I'm talking about a lot right now, when you get the connection to breath is more to give you the peace of mind, to bring you in the present moment. That's a connection to the breath. So when you're like huffing and puffing and doing high intense exercises, coming to our audience that we're speaking to right now, it's usually you need to calm down. So how do I learn to be comfortable being uncomfortable? You need to slow your breath down. So by doing high intensity stuff, it's going to increase your cortisol level, maybe trigger more stuff. But, I could be wrong. Each individual is different. But coming back to the beginning of what's your ideal movement pattern, and then starting to create exercises and options around that. A lot of the things that I do is I get to the core and then to the end, and then we work backwards. So that's how the toolbox is created.
If you had to pick one or two key things that you have done that have led to your success, what would you say those are?
I showed up regardless of how I felt. Period. Everything that I'm doing, I'm so scared. I'm so scared, but I know that I lean into it. And when I lean into it, I know I'm on the right track. And anything that I'm complacent with, I know I have to move because it's just going to hurt me. I'm not living. I'm settling. And that's when you really die, truly. Like your soul dies. You're alive, but you're not living.
For someone that's got 13 years sober, what would you say is one of the biggest things that has helped you stay sober all this time?
Being of service to others. You have to be of service to others. When stuff is so intense, you have to, number one, take care of yourself. Always make that a non-negotiable. Never, when you stop taking care of yourself, you lose yourself. And that's when you go down the rabbit hole. So no matter what, but also come to a space of service, volunteer. My career really, really helped my healing process because when I was in that space, I had to decide, I'm like, who am I? I'm 65 pounds overweight. I'm struggling with addiction. I have no control over food. Who am I to become a personal trainer? Because that's where I started, as doing just personal training, and then ended up doing life coaching and made this hybrid of life coaching, nutrition, and training still, and then built online courses and stuff like that. But being of service and coaching, I'm affirming things that I wholeheartedly know, but I have to just get caught up with that. And so put yourself in a space and an environment where it's healthy for you in the long run, regardless of asking yourself, who am I to do this? it heals. It reconnects you to who you already truly are.
Wow. And what piece of actionable advice would you have for listeners who are trying to improve their business or even their personal life?
One thing that I always say is one of my taglines is self-care is the gateway to self-mastery. And self-mastery, when you really master yourself, that truly is success to everything and anything that you do in your life. So self-care has to be a non-negotiable.
Tanya, there have been so many gold nuggets throughout this whole podcast. I'm so excited to get this out to the listeners. This has been such an incredible experience. I'm really, really grateful that Michael got us connected.
Thank you.
And where can people find you online?
So I have a website, but like I said, everything's being rebranded. It's www.Tanya, Tanya, Silva, SILV as in Victor, A.com. Social media at Diet Junkie, YouTube. But I do send out free newsletters that are really, really powerful every Monday at 8 p.m. So if you sign into the website, put your name and email, you'll receive them. And then other information they can get from there.
Guys, be sure to check out Tanya and everything that she's putting out. And thank you so much for being on the Self-Made and Sober podcast. I really appreciate your time.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you so much for listening to Self-Made and Sober. Be sure to join our Facebook group at facebook.com/groups/SMC Mastermind, like Self-Made Coaching Mastermind. I hope you enjoyed the show, and be sure to subscribe and rate the show so you can get notified each Friday when we put out a new episode.